What would you say to those people who say that the government should move to legalise more drugs and then they can oversee what's actually going on in the drugs market and reduce the sort of criminal aspect to that? What would you say to those?
It's a serious argument, but I don't accept it. My basic view is the less drugs are consumed, whether legal or illegal drugs, whether, for example, cannabis or heroin or alcohol, the less that's consumed, the better for society is what I think. So I think for each change should be judged by does it make people more or less likely to consume the particular drug that we're talking about. That's why, for example, I favour the bans on tobacco advertising. It's also why I am not in favour of changing the classification of cannabis.
Changing it back to Class C or back to Class B, or you're not in favour of?
I felt the decision to reduce its classification was a wrong decision. When I was Home Secretary, I went through it in great detail, and I came to the view that to reclassify it back wouldn't be the right thing to do, so to leave it where it was, but to have a very much enhanced police enforcement against the suppliers of cannabis and against abuse of cannabis. And that's what I think is the right position. Now, the government's now looking again at whether it wants to change the classification, and we'll see what they come up with, but I'm sceptical whether there will be something beneficial coming out of that.
Do you think that the implementation of reducing the classification of cannabis to Class C sent out the wrong messages, and it's going to have some far-reaching ramifications for years to come?
It did send out the wrong messages. It's why I think it was the wrong thing to do. But when we looked at what's actually happened to the consumption of cannabis over the last period, it hasn't gone up, in fact, contrary to my expectations. And I think you have, for the reasons I said earlier, to look all the time at what the actual consumption is and what has actually happened. And that's what I think should be the principal test in this current review the government's doing.
And the UK has one of the highest drugs misuse rates in Europe, especially amongst young people, and also binge drinking. Do you think that there's a wider problem in our society with young people taking drugs today compared to when you were young, maybe? And were you ever exposed to drugs at all?
Not compared to when I was young, I would say. As I've said many years ago, I did consume some cannabis when I was really quite young, and I was very much exposed to the drug culture, but I decided I didn't want to do that, and so I didn't do it through my university years. But there was a very substantial drug-taking culture at that time, which was basically, I think, a very bad thing. And whether it's higher today or not, I wouldn't know. What I do know is the kind of cannabis which is being consumed is more dangerous to consume than was happening 30 or 40 years ago.